The Texas Burn Survivor Society, or TBSS, was formed in 1996 by David and Jane Jane, specifically to serve burn survivors and their families in the South Texas area, with an emphasis on burn wounded warriors and burn children and their families. However, the story of TBSS did not begin in 1996, but actually started early in the 1950s, when two young people met in college and married shortly after college. David went into the Army to fly helicopters, and by 1959, David was a young first lieutenant in the U.S. Army serving in Guatemala. David and Jane, and at that time their two children, Michael and Lisa, were enjoying living in Guatemala while David flew helicopters, assisting in the mapping of the Guatemala countryside. On Valentine's Day, 1959, their lives would be changed forever as David's helicopter exploded and crashed on takeoff, and David was burned over 65% of his body, mostly on his face, hands, and arms, and upper body. It took almost 2 weeks to get David to San Antonio's U.S. Army Burn Center at Fort Sam Houston. By that time, David was in bad shape. Gangrene had set in, and he would lose the ends of all of his fingers, plus massive facial burns. But David would be met at the burn center by a young Dr. Basil Pruitt, destined to become the premier burn treatment and surgery doctor in the United States. David underwent 28 operations to rebuild his face and hands and spent almost 3 years being in and out of the hospital for surgery and rehabilitation. However, during this 3-year period, Jane learned how difficult it was to manage a family and to help her husband cope with all the stress and emotional issues associated with being severely burned. And at the same time, they began to encounter so many other families struggling to cope with juggling family responsibilities while helping their burned spouse recover from multiple surgeries, amputations, and disfigurement. David and Jane became aware that God had placed on their heart a desire to help others in this kind of struggle, and so they began to lead a support group at BAMC, even during the time of David's own surgery recovery and rehabilitation. David's positive attitude toward recovery and return to flying status inspired other patients in their own emotional and physical rehabilitation. It is clear that looking back, the long-term desire to help burn survivors was set in motion way back in the 1959 to 1962 period. Amazingly, and it speaks volumes about David, he requested and was approved to go back on flying status. David went on to a distinguished career in the U.S. Army, including serving a combat tour in Vietnam. After leaving the Army, David obtained a law degree in 1972 from St. Mary's Law School and entered his legal career with Tinsman and Hauser. For 23 years, David practiced law as he and Jane went about busy and fruitful lives. During this time, David and Jane found time between their busy schedules to travel, tour in their RV, go skiing, play golf, and enjoy their extensive family. David is quoted as saying, "I appreciate each day to a much greater extent than before. A day without pain and not facing another operation is a godsend. I realize now that each of us has a certain number of days allocated to our life, and each of us has a responsibility to make the most of it for ourselves, our family, our church, and our country." But David and Jane never lost their passion for helping burn survivors and their families. They continued to make frequent visits to the burn ward at BAMC and to make contact with patients, as well as having many opportunities to talk to their families. It was during this interval between 1972 and 1995 that David and Jane began to have more direct contact with burned children being treated at BAMC and at other hospitals in the South Texas area. Through these contacts with burned children and their families, the need for a specialized pediatric summer camp in South Texas was identified. As God has done so many times in the life of David and Jane, He sent in 1996 an angel in the form of a lady from their church to offer to fund this first summer camp in South Texas, specifically for burned children and their siblings. This angel's name was Ruth Drybeldes, who was affectionately known as the Candy Lady due to her periodic visits to Boysville, where she handed out candy and other goodies to the children. Ruth offered to fund the first pediatric summer camp conducted by TBSS. David and Jane, seeing this as an opportunity to greatly increase their holistic ministry to burn survivors, formed a board of directors and started the Texas Burn Survivor Society, or TBSS, a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping burn survivors and their families. The first summer camp was conducted in 1996 at the YMCA Camp Flaming Arrow near Hunt, Texas, and appropriately named Camp Candy Lady in honor of the gift from Ruth Drybeldes. Since that first children's summer camp in 1996, TBSS has conducted 18 successive summer camps for burned children and their siblings and the children of burn survivors. These camps were initially conducted at Camp Flaming Arrow near Hunt, Texas, but more recently the camp has been renamed Camp David and conducted at the Texas Lions Camp in Kerrville. TBSS fully scholarships all the children who attend these camps, including providing transportation to and from the camp. Initially, David and Jane, along with volunteers, had to organize and man all the camp activities, from arts and crafts to horseback riding to fishing, swimming, and canoeing. The emphasis had always been on ensuring the children enjoyed a wonderful, safe camp experience without fear of a child being singled out due to their scars, disfigurement, or disabilities. David and Jane have been to every summer camp and generally spend the entire week helping with the camp and interacting with all the children. TBSS has also been fortunate to have many volunteers to help with the summer camps, including our board of directors, members of the San Antonio Fire Department, nurses, and many others from various walks of life. TBSS was started in 1996 in order to conduct the annual pediatric summer camp, but since that time, we have greatly expanded our support to burn survivors and their families, with the emphasis remaining on wounded warriors and children with severe burn injuries, scarring, and disfigurement. One of David's lifelong hobbies has been working with stained glass and creating various beautiful pieces of stained glass artwork. In visiting with wounded warriors at now the San Antonio Military Medical Center, or SAMC, David saw the need for an activity whereby these badly injured men and women could rehabilitate their hands and fingers after severe scarring and sometimes amputations. In addition, soldiers with traumatic brain injuries would greatly benefit from this kind of artwork. To meet this need, David started the TBSS Mosaic Table Project at Fort Sam's Warrior and Family Support Center. David and Jane, along with trained volunteers, teach these wounded warriors and interested family members how to develop unique patterns of their own interests, cut the glass, and glue the glass into the pattern they have developed. When finished, the individual gets to take his or her table with the cut glass mosaic to their home. This program, started in 2007, has had over 600 participants, producing over 700 mosaic glass tables and other glass mosaic pieces of art. David and Jane faithfully go out to Fort Sam on a weekly basis to help out on this project and to interact and encourage the wounded warriors as they construct their glass mosaics. Another activity of TBSS is the annual Mother's Day retreat that we conduct for wounded warriors and their families at a local dude ranch. This has been an annual event since 2008, where about 20 families each year enjoy a wonderful weekend at the dude ranch with TBSS covering all the costs. Many of these families have been previously helped by TBSS through our scar management support and the Emergency Assistance Fund. Activities at the Dude Ranch are designed for both adults and children and include hay rides, horseback riding, line dancing, lots and lots of food, and general rest and relaxation. Another important part of the holistic ministry of TBSS is to support where we can the doctors, the nurses, and other staff who work in the burn ward at Fort Sam. An example of this is that during the Christmas season, TBSS provides a sumptuous lunch for the staff of the burn ward as a way of saying thank you for all they do for burn wounded warriors. Again, David and Jane are always at these events, providing their infectious smile and encouragement to these dedicated men and women. As we enter our 19th year of existence, it is the hope of the Board of Directors at TBSS that this video, in some small way, expresses our profound appreciation and love for David and Jane. More importantly, we hope this video illustrates the multiplicity of ways that David and Jane have helped thousands of burned adults and children, including wounded warriors, recover from these severe burns, both physically and emotionally. A marriage blessed by God has resulted in countless blessings to adults and children who have been touched by David and Jane. Our world is truly a better place because of David and Jane, and their work will continue for years to come through the arm of the organization they founded, the Texas Burn Survivor Society.